Have you ever seen a boy who had everything money could buy, yet longed for something money could never give, a purpose that touched hearts instead of wallets? In a world where fame is often bought, this story begins with a young Filipino teen whose life looked perfect from the outside: a mansion overlooking Manila Bay, private tutors, luxury cars waiting in the driveway. But deep within him, there lived a quiet ache, a yearning to be seen not for his family's wealth, but for the voice that lived in his soul. His name was Adrian Cruz, a 17-year-old whose heart was softer than his confidence showed. Born into comfort, raised in abundance, yet he felt like a stranger in his own golden world. His father, Eduardo Cruz, a powerful businessman, dreamed his son would inherit the empire. His mother, Laura Cruz, a woman of elegance and kindness, only wished her son would find true happiness, the kind untouched by money. Music was Adrian's hidden world, a quiet rebellion echoing through the walls of his expensive home. When he sang, he wasn't the Cruz heir. He was simply Adrian, the boy who felt every word, every note, as if it carried a piece of his heart. And one day, in a city thousands of miles away, he stood trembling on the world's biggest stage, America's Got Talent. The crowd waited. Simon Cowell's eyes studied him with quiet disbelief, a rich Filipino teen, holding a microphone like it was his only truth. No one expected what happened next. As the first lines of Hotel California filled the air, the world went silent. There was something in his voice, something raw, haunting, and heartbreakingly pure. Who would have thought that behind a boy born into luxury, there was a voice carved out of longing, a voice that could make even Simon Cowell cry? Adrian Cruz grew up in a world where everything sparkled: marble floors that echoed his footsteps, chandeliers that glowed like stars, and gates that kept reality outside. His father, Eduardo, believed success was measured in numbers, profits, deals, and power. His mother, Laura, believed love could soften even the hardest heart. Between them stood Adrian, quiet, polite, and painfully out of place in his own life. He wasn't the loud type. He didn't chase friends or crowds. While others his age filled their nights with laughter and screens, Adrian filled his with melodies. He would sit by his bedroom window, a small guitar resting on his knees, gazing at the city lights that shimmered below. The world outside looked alive, but his own world felt painfully still. Music became his secret companion. He wasn't trained by expensive tutors, he learned by listening, by feeling. Old songs, especially Hotel California, spoke to him in ways no one else did. The song's haunting rhythm reminded him of the golden cage he lived in, beautiful, but lonely. He often wondered why people assumed that wealth meant happiness. Inside his heart, there was an emptiness money could never fill, a quiet ache for connection, for purpose. He had all the comforts but none of the belonging. Every morning, he followed a routine of perfection: neatly ironed clothes, polite smiles at breakfast, and distant conversations with a father too busy for words. Yet every night, his heart returned to music. Sometimes, the maids would hear his soft humming echo through the halls, not just a tune, but a cry disguised as a song. He was gentle, humble, and observant, the kind of soul that noticed beauty in silence. But beneath that calm surface, a fire was waiting, a dream to prove that. For most of his life, Adrian had lived surrounded by people, drivers, maids, tutors, classmates, yet somehow, he felt completely alone. The laughter that echoed through school halls never seemed to reach him. To everyone else, he was the rich kid, the one who had everything. But to Adrian, it was a label that trapped him. No one cared about what he loved, what he felt, or what he dreamed of. He often sat at the grand piano in the corner of his home, letting his fingers move across the keys like whispers of emotions he could never say aloud. The melodies comforted him, but they also reminded him of what was missing: a voice that could be heard, not ignored. His father, Eduardo, never understood this side of him. To Eduardo, music was a hobby, a distraction from the serious world of business. Focus on your future, he would often say. But for Adrian, music was the future, the only thing that made his heart feel alive. One night, After yet another silent dinner, Adrian overheard his father's voice in the study, firm, disappointed. "He's wasting his time with songs. He should be preparing to lead, not to perform." The words hit him like a wave of rejection. He didn't cry, but something inside him cracked quietly, the kind of break that only silence could hear. That night, he sat by his window again, guitar in hand, and whispered the lyrics of Hotel California under his breath. It was as if the song spoke directly to his heart, a story about being trapped in a place that looked beautiful but felt suffocating. The reflection of the city lights shimmered in his eyes like tears he refused to shed. Adrian's conflict wasn't between right or wrong, it was between duty and dream. Between the life others expected him to live and the one his soul begged him to follow. And that invisible battle, the ache of wanting to be free in a world built on expectations, would soon lead him to make the bravest decision of his life. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind that passed like any other. The Cruz mansion was filled with the faint hum of air conditioning and the distant chatter of workers. But inside Adrian's room, the air was different, heavier, filled with the weight of dreams he didn't know how to chase. Scrolling through his phone, he stumbled upon a short clip, a young Filipino street singer performing in front of a crowd on America's Got Talent. The boy wasn't dressed fancy, didn't come from money, yet his voice carried power, raw and pure. The judges stood, the audience roared, and Simon Cowell pressed the golden buzzer. Adrian froze. He watched the clip over and over again. Something inside him stirred, a trembling mix of envy, admiration, and awakening. If he can stand there with nothing but a voice, what's stopping me? That thought wouldn't leave him. For days, it followed him like a heartbeat. During breakfast, during piano practice, even during family dinners where his father spoke of business and legacy. Adrian listened silently, but in his mind, all he could hear was the echo of that performance. Late one night, he made a choice that would change everything. He recorded himself singing Hotel California, his most cherished song, one that mirrored his own story. His hands shook, but his heart felt steady. When he finished, his voice cracked with emotion, and for the first time, he didn't hide it. He uploaded the video, not expecting anyone to notice. But fate had other plans. Within a week, his performance began to spread, shared, reposted, and celebrated. People were moved not by his wealth, but by the pain in his voice, the honesty in every note. One morning, as sunlight spilled through his window, an email arrived. The subject line read, "America's Got Talent, invitation to audition." Adrian's breath caught. The boy who had lived behind gates was now being called to the biggest stage in the world. For the first time, his dream wasn't a secret anymore, it was calling him forward. The days leading up to his flight to Los Angeles were filled with a whirlwind of emotions, excitement, fear, and guilt. For the first time in his life, Adrian was stepping outside the shadow of his family's wealth, and it terrified him. His father, Eduardo, didn't approve. When he learned about the audition, disappointment clouded his face. "You're throwing away your future for applause," he said coldly. The words stung more than Adrian expected. His mother, Laura, tried to mediate, but even her soft voice couldn't bridge the distance between father and son. Adrian left home quietly, carrying only a guitar, a few clothes, and a trembling heart. At the airport, his reflection in the glass seemed foreign, a boy no longer defined by luxury, but by courage. Every mile that separated him from home stripped away a layer of fear. When he arrived in America, the glittering lights of Los Angeles didn't intimidate him, they inspired him. But behind that inspiration lay struggle. He had no entourage, no assistants, just his determination. The rehearsals were exhausting. His fingers blistered, his voice cracked from endless practice, and self-doubt whispered in his mind every night. He questioned himself constantly, "Am I good enough? Will they laugh if I fail?" Yet every time he thought of quitting, he remembered the street singer who dared to dream, and the millions of voices online who believed in his song. In the quiet of his small hotel room, Adrian learned something profound: greatness doesn't come from perfection, it comes from honesty. His music didn't need to impress, it needed to feel. As he stood before the mirror on the eve of his audition, he saw not the son of a tycoon, but a young man who had walked through doubt, fear, and loneliness, and found himself on the other side. That night, he whispered to his reflection, "This time, I'll sing not to be heard, but to be understood." He didn't know it yet, but that promise would soon touch millions, and make even Simon Cowell cry. The stage of America's Got Talent shimmered beneath the golden lights, vast and intimidating. As Adrian Cruz walked into the spotlight, the audience whispered curiously, a polished young man, guitar in hand, his calm hiding a storm of emotions within. The judges studied him, Simon Cowell's eyes sharp but unreadable. Adrian took a deep breath. For a moment, the world seemed to fade away, the crowd, the cameras, even the judges' gazes. All he could hear was his heartbeat. And then, he strummed the first chord of Hotel California. The familiar tune floated through the air, gentle yet haunting. But what came next was unlike anything anyone expected. His voice, soft at first, carried a depth that silenced the crowd. Each lyric flowed from a place far deeper than performance, it came from pain, longing, and a lifetime of unspoken words. As he sang, memories filled his mind, his father's disapproval, his lonely nights in the mansion, his mother's quiet prayers, and the dream he had dared to chase. With every note, it felt as though he was releasing the weight he had carried for years. When he reached the final chorus, his voice broke slightly, not from weakness, but from truth. The hall was utterly still. Even Simon Cowell leaned forward, his expression softening, his eyes glistening under the stage lights. The last note hung in the air like a farewell to the past. And then, silence. A heartbeat later, the audience erupted in applause. People stood, cheering, crying, holding their hearts as if something sacred had just passed through them. Simon Cowell wiped a tear before he could hide it, whispering something only the other judges heard. Then, with a rare smile, he reached forward, and pressed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti rained down around Adrian as he stood frozen, tears streaming down his face. For the first time, he wasn't just seen, he was understood. Somewhere in that glowing storm of gold, he closed his eyes and whispered a silent thank you, not to fame, not to fortune, but to the courage that finally let him be himself. When the golden confetti settled and the cheers faded into echoes, Adrian stood quietly under the soft glow of the stage lights, tears still glistening on his cheeks. In that stillness, he realized something profound. The moment that changed his life wasn't the golden buzzer itself, but the courage it took to stand there and be honest. He had spent years living behind walls of privilege, smiling for appearances, hiding his loneliness behind polished perfection. But all it took was a single song, sung with truth, to break those walls apart. For the first time, the world saw not a rich boy, but a human heart, fragile, hopeful, and real. In the days that followed, his story spread across the world. People didn't just talk about his voice, they talked about the emotion that lived inside it. Viewers said his performance reminded them of something they had lost, their own forgotten dreams, buried beneath fear and routine. Adrian had unknowingly given them a reason to feel again. Back home in Manila, Eduardo Cruz watched his son's performance replay on the television. The sight of his boy trembling with tears under falling gold shattered his pride. For the first time, he understood, success wasn't about wealth or control, but about freedom. That night, he called Adrian with a voice unsteady and soft, whispering words he had never said before, "I'm proud of you." Adrian didn't need trophies, fame, or fortune. The real victory was the peace he felt within, the knowledge that he had followed the voice of his soul, even when the world doubted him. His story became a quiet reminder for millions: you don't need to be born with everything to feel empty, and you don't need to lose everything to find yourself. Sometimes, the richest people are those who finally dare to be real. And somewhere between his trembling voice and Simon Cowell's tears, the world remembered what music, and humanity, truly means. To connect. To feel. To be free.